So today I want to talk about creative financing. So what is creative financing? Creative financing is a different way or unique way to buy something that's not traditional or not the way that most people would think that's the way you have to do it. So recently I have bought a few businesses using creative financing and many properties. So I want to kind of go through like how some of these deals were structured and how I was able to do them with creative financing and not using any of my own money. In creative financing, you really want to figure out ways to use almost none of your own money or very little. Okay, so my favorite option in creative financing is owner financing. So with owner financing, there's like 1,000 different ways to put it together and make it work. The first thing in owner financing is figure out how long will the owner give you that financing for. You could work a deal where they give you the financing for 1 year, up to 20 years, maybe even longer. So depending on the deal and what fits the problem that you're solving for this seller is how they're going to figure out the duration of how long they're going to loan you that money for an owner finance deal. The next thing with owner financing to figure out is how much a month that you're going to have to pay them. So when I do owner financing, I pay them monthly payments until they're paid off. So you can create, all kinds of different payments, anywhere from as low as $100 or less up to, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a month based on the deal you're buying. So this is another negotiable thing to think about. The payment amount can change by year. So let's say I pay them $1,000 a month. I might structure the deal where instead of paying them $1,000 a month forever, maybe the first year I'm paying them $1,000 a month. The second year I'm paying them $2,000 a month. Third year $3,000 a month. So again, this is creative thinking. You don't always have to pay them the same amount every single month forever. You could structure it like if you think you're going to be making more money later or you have more cash flow to give them later on, you could pay them more later on. The next thing to think about is the payment amount that you pay them every month can change based on how profitable the business is. You might work a deal where if the business is making this much money a month, I have to pay them this much. If it's making a different amount, you can pay them more or less based on how much the business is making. So that's another creative way to figure out how you're going to pay the owner. Again, none of these options are necessarily correct or right or wrong. As long as you are happy with them and the seller is happy with them and it makes sense, then it's a perfect deal for you. The next thing that you want to negotiate is how much of a down payment that you have to pay them. So if I'm buying a business from someone or a property from someone for $1 million, do I have to pay them $100,000 up front, $500,000 up front, maybe zero up front? Well, that's negotiable. So again, you can negotiate anywhere from 0% all the way up, to whatever you guys think makes sense for that deal. The other thing you do with down payments is I might buy $1 million deal and the person might want 20% down. Well, that's $200,000. I might be like, okay, fine, I'll give you your 20% down. However, I can't give you all 20% down the first day. Maybe I'll split it up into 5 down payments. Maybe I'll give them $50,000 day one as a down payment, and then maybe every 3 months give them another $50,000 until they have that $200,000 up front. So you could split the down payments up sometimes if what they want is too much, and you could kind of say, look, I'll still give you that down payment, but break it up into multiple down payments. That's another option. Another way to figure out is how long your loan with them that they're seller financing for you is going to be amortized. So typically on a business, I start anywhere from 3 years all the way up to 30 years. On property, I usually make sure it's amortized, 10 to 30 years, and sometimes I pay it off sooner. So that's all negotiable, and you just need to figure out what the payments are going to be and make sure that you are cash flowing to where that number makes sense for your deal. When you do an amortized loan, you want to amortize it over as long of a period of time as possible, because the longer you amortize it over, the smaller your monthly payments are. But sometimes you might work a deal with someone and they're like, you know what, I don't mind amortizing my payments over 30 years. However, I'm too old or I need the money sooner. I'm not going to wait 30 years for you to pay me off. So I need to get paid off in 10 years or 5 years or 7 years or 15 years. And what you do in that situation is you amortize the loan over 30 years to get the payments lower, but then after 10 years, if they need to get the money back after 10 years, you make a balloon payment at 10 years. And what that means is that you've only paid off a certain amount of the money in 10 years because it's amortized over 30, but whatever the balance is at that 10-year mark, you're going to have to pay them all in full. So that's another thing that you could add to your creative financing structure, is when there's going to be a balloon payment, or if there is even going to be a balloon payment. Next thing is the interest that you pay the seller. So when I'm doing owner finance deals, a lot of times the owner is going to want interest on the money that they're lending me. And I try to get the interest as low as possible, 1%, 3%, 5%, depending on the deal. But a lot of times I get 0%. And I would strongly suggest you go for getting a 0% interest. Now, a lot of times it's a hard sale. So the way that I am able to sell that to people is, look, I'm paying you $1 million for your property or $1 million for your business, and really it's only worth $800,000. So I'm actually giving you $200,000 more. I'm just, giving you all the interest up front. So instead of me paying you $800,000 for your business or property and then paying you a certain percent interest, I'm just going to give you the extra $200,000 up front, and that's why I figured the price at what I, figured it, because of I figured it was going to be at 0% interest. Now, if you're buying a property and the property is a $200,000 property and you work the deal and that's what the person wants for the property, and then they're like, well, I want 5% interest or whatever it is. A lot of times what I'll do is, especially if it's a long-term loan, I will be like, you know what, you only want $200,000 for the business and you want 5% interest. What I'd rather do is give you an extra $10,000 or $20,000 for your property if it's a property I know I'm going to hold long term. So instead of giving them $200,000, I'll say, look, I'll give you $210,000 or $220,000 or whatever I need to do to get the interest rate to 0. Because long term, it's going to save you a lot of money, and every single month you're going to pay down the principal, and you're just going to see a lot greater return on your money. So that's another creative thing that you can do with interest. Try to get as low as possible, or try to give them a little bit more money than they want to lower the interest, or just get rid of the interest. Earnouts. So earnouts is another way to buy businesses or even properties. What an earnout is if somebody wants more than you want to pay. Let's say you want to pay $1 million, they want $1.2 million, and you just come to an agreement to where, look, you're going to pay them $1 million guaranteed, and then if this business does better than I expect, but maybe what you expect, and does a certain number, I will give you a bonus of $100,000 or $200,000 based on if it hits these certain numbers. And the numbers can be based on profit, it can be based on really anything, but that's an earnout. You're not guaranteeing the extra money, but you're going to give it them if you hit these thresholds that you guys agreed to ahead of time. On a property, the way you would do an earnout is, a lot of times I'm buying homes to hold long term, and a lot of times I'm buying homes to fix and flip. And right now I'm doing mostly fix and flips because the market is so hot. So in this situation, what I would do is maybe a seller wants $300,000 for their property, and I only want to pay him $275,000. I'll be like, you know what? I think I'm going to sell this property after I fix it up for $450,000. And they're like, no, you're going to get $500,000. So what I might say is, look, I'm going to give you the money that I can afford to give you right now, the $275,000. But if it sells for what you think it's going to sell for, I'll give you the extra, $10,000 or $20,000, or we'll split that profit based on more than what I think and what you think. So that's how you can pay them extra for the property if it's a property deal. So it's an earnout. It's not guaranteed. It's only going to get paid if you sell the house for more than what you think, but what the seller thinks that it can go for. Another creative financing structure that I really like, especially for people that don't have much money to buy a lot of properties, is to work a deal on a property. So I'll buy the property, we'll come to an agreement, and then what I'll say is, look, the reason why I'm buying your property is because I want to put like $100,000 into it, fix it up, rehab it, and then after it's all rehab, I'm gonna sell it. And what I'll do is I'll pay once I resell it. So I'm gonna owe them this $100,000 for the property, but I don't have to pay them until I fix it up and resell it. So instead of me having $100,000 in this property, I'm only gonna have the $30,000 or $40,000 or whatever money I put into rehabbing it invested, and then once I sell it, I'm going to then give them the $100,000, and sometimes this gets delayed for a few months or longer depending on how big of a rehab it needs. And that's just a way to use a lot less of your cash, but sometimes you can give the seller a little bit more money because you don't have to pay them up front, so it's a little bit easier of a deal. Like if you were to go get a hard money loan or get a loan from someone, you're gonna have to pay them so much extra money anyway. It's better to give it to the seller sometimes and let them finance it for you until it's gonna sell. And you might have a deal, look, it needs to sell within 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and based on that, you can figure out the structure of how much more they're gonna get. So these are all some of my favorite ways to do creative financing, and owner financing is just great. There's a lot of reasons why I would do owner financing, even if I have the money and don't need the owner financing. First off, when I have an owner finance deal, I'm always able to get the owner or the seller to help me a lot more than they normally would because they're invested. They know I still owe them a lot of money. So because I still owe them money, if I call them or if I need some help, they're gonna help me usually a lot faster, a lot quicker, and more detailed than if I didn't owe them money. They're just more motivated because they know that by them helping me, I'm gonna be able to now afford to pay them when I need to pay them, and I'll pay them easier, faster, and we're helping each other. So that's the owner financing. A few other ways that I like doing creative finance deals is by taking over existing debts. So a lot of times when I'm buying a business, they owe a lot of money to people that they buy stuff from, or equipment loans or different loans. And if I'm buying their business for $1 million and they owe $200,000 to different people, instead of me paying that owner $1 million, I would like to pay them $800,000 and then take over their loans for them, and I would just take over and pay their loans for them. So that's how it would work in a business situation if I was buying a business. Now, if I'm buying property, I do this even more. So how do I do this in property? Well, what I do is, if somebody already has a mortgage in place, I will take over, I'll buy their property and then just pay them their equity. So the equity is the money that they have that's over and above what they owe on it. So if I'm buying a house from somebody for $100,000 and they owe $80,000 on their mortgage, I will try to take over their mortgage and make their $80,000 payments for them so they're not responsible for it anymore. And then I'll just give them the $20,000 in equity. And again, I might give them that money up front, I might give them a small amount of it up front, I might give them very little of it up front. But with that $20,000, I'll go back into this owner financing structure and figure out how I'm going to give them that $20,000. But the point is that I'm going to pay their mortgage for them so they don't have to worry about it. And that just makes me have to pay them $20,000 instead of $100,000. Okay. Next way is to buy a portion of the deal. So a lot of times a business can be just really expensive and I can't get the deal quite done. And what I'll do is, let's say I want to pay a certain amount of money, or I can come up with a certain amount of money, and I'm still short 25% of what I need to come up with. I'll basically tell the owner, look, I'm only going to buy 75% of your business, and the 25% that you're going to still keep is going to be the down payment that I have to pay you. And then maybe I'll have in there that at some point in the future, I could buy their 25% at a certain price once I save up enough money or I realize it's worth doing that. So again, you don't have to buy 100% of every deal. You can buy a smaller percent, and sometimes you can use the percent that you're not buying as a down payment for the business. All right. Another way is to sell equity to a partner. So, or JV is joint venturing with someone. So basically what this is instead of getting a loan so I can pay the seller, is getting another person to partner with me, and the person that's partnering with me, I'm going to get them to give me the money that I need and give them some percent of the business. And you could, figure out what that person, what percent of the business you need to give them and how much money they're going to give you for that percent. And then you can use that money that they're giving you as a down payment or maybe for operations or whatever you need it for. Another way is to start a fund. So me personally, I have a ton of people all the time call me up, man, I have extra money, I want to make money on it. I just don't have a way to make money on it. In the bank right now, I'm making zero interest basically. And you always show me how, or tell me how you're able to make 10%, 20%, 30% on your money. Can I give you some money and you put it to work for me to where I could partner with you or loan you money, be your bank, and you make money on my money. So I always have people do that. So I actually have multiple people that give me money that I help them make a good return on their money. So you can start a fund and go after people and just let people know, look, I am buying properties, I am buying businesses, I am making a very good return on my money. If you want, I could use some of your money and I'll give you a much better return than you're making on your money, and you can use my property or you can use my business that I'm buying as collateral to make sure that you're safe with your investment. I always make sure that people have very good collateral, because the most important thing for people when they're investing in something is to make sure that they're not going to lose money on the deal. Everybody wants to make as much as possible, but the most important thing is to not lose. All right, next. Sell some of the assets to get the down payment. So this is something I just did. I just bought a deal last week and a business, and they have a whole bunch of equipment and inventory that I just didn't need because I already had that equipment in another business and I just didn't need multiple. So the way I did this deal is I sold a lot of their equipment and used the money that I got from their equipment that I sold to give them as the down payment. And then the rest of the money, I just set up monthly payments that were about half of what their profit was to pay them off for the rest of the money. So again, always see what that business has and get rid of what you don't need and use that money for down payment or what you need to use it for. Asset-based loans. So there's plenty of people out there that will give you loans for businesses and property based on the assets that's in the business or what the house is worth. And it's not a traditional bank, but there's tons of people. If you Google it, you'll find unlimited amounts of people that will lend you money on that stuff. Now, it's usually at a higher interest rate, but again, if the numbers all make sense, it can be very good to take advantage of that. A cash flow loan is a loan that you would get based on how well the business is doing. If the business is making X amount of money, different lenders or banks will lend you money on a multiple of how much the business is making. All right, next is getting lines of credit. So again, this is based on how good your credit is, what your experience is, but a lot of banks or different vendors will give you a line of credit. You don't even have to borrow the money. They'll just say, look, if you need up to this much money, you can come and get it anytime you want. Lines of credits are great because you don't have to pay interest on money that you're not using. You only take the money out as you need it, and you're paying interest on the money as you need it, and then if you have extra money, you put it back in, and you don't have to pay interest. So that's a great alternative for people that can get lines of credits on different things. Now, cross-collateralizing is awesome. So you can do this with lines of credit, you can do this with properties or businesses. So I have a deal that I'm doing with some people on some properties where they are giving me money to invest for them, and what I do is instead of giving them a lien on or collateral on the properties that I'm buying for them, I'm using other properties I have and giving them that as collateral, because it's much easier for me that way, because instead of me having to come up with new collateral every single time and making new contracts, I could just have a bunch of properties I know that I'm keeping long term and use those as collateral instead of having to come up. So you can cross-collateralize. It's basically, if you're buying a property, borrow money on another property to pay for that property. That's cross-collateralizing. All right. Next is getting money from vendors. So that's an awesome way to do it. So I have a friend that just opened up a store a couple miles down the road from me right here, and they opened a chicken store. They sell chicken sandwiches. It was really good, by the way. I went by there last week and had one on their grand opening. So I was like, well, how much money did you come up with to have to start this business? It seems like it's a nice build out and everything else. They're like, well, guess what? I got money from the landlord for taking this space, and then on top of that, I made a deal with this chicken supplier that if I buy all my chicken from them, as long as I'm open, they're going to give me, or they gave him, something like $50,000 to $100,000. So he guarantees that he only buys chicken from them. So that's an example of getting money from vendors up front. A lot of times you can get money from vendors, free money to just basically guarantee to use their product. I have a friend that has a gas station that did the same thing. It was just a no-name gas station, and they made a deal with like a Chevron or Exxon or something like that, or a Shell, and they said, look, we will give you $100,000 up front, but we need you to change your station to a Shell station, and you can only buy gas from Shell, obviously. So he just got that $100,000 up front, and now he's a Shell station. So that is getting money from vendors. Getting money from customers. So when you have a lot of customers that you deal with constantly, they're buying stuff from you every single month, and sometimes they would prefer to get a better deal. And this is something you can go to customers when you buy a business and be like, look, if you can pay me for 6 months up front, or 3 months up front, or 1 year up front, I'll give you a 5%, 10%, whatever percent discount you need to give them, and then they'll pay you all this money up front. And I actually have a bunch of friends that have done that, and we actually do that in some of my businesses. So I have some gyms, and right now the monthly membership is $150 a month. But some members, they know they're going to be here for many, many years. So instead of them paying me $150 a month, I give them a 10% discount, and they'll just pay me for a year up front with a 10% discount. And it's the same situation that happens in other businesses, that some of their customers would rather get a better deal and just pay for stuff up front. So I hope that gives you a bunch of ideas. There's millions more, and then you could mix and match all these ideas and come up with thousands of different ways to do creative financing. And in another video, I'll break down a bunch of different deals I have done and how I've used a lot of these things together to come up with a deal that was a great win-win for everybody. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.